Juliun Lane led the West Greene Buffaloes to a playoff appearance in the gridiron this past season, in large part because of the 20 touchdowns that he scored on offense alone. And as a defensive back, he seemed to be very adept, certainly was a thorn in the side of Unicoi County, really turned their season around. They were 5-3 when they met West Greene. Because of Juliun Lane, they would go into, in large part, a 3-game losing streak to end the season, and thus denying Unicoi County their first winning record in 21 years. Still, Juliun Lane, for my money, was the best player that I saw the Blue Devils play this year. He just committed to go to East Tennessee State. We've got him online right now during his lunch hour. Juliun Lane, a pleasure to talk to you and make your acquaintance. I'm Marky Billson on Tri-City Sports Now. First question is obvious. Why ETSU?
Well, it's a place I just named to like home. It's close to my house. It's just like 45 minutes down the street. It's Division I, and it's really big for me, and I really enjoyed it there.
Well, I know that wasn't the only D1 program that was looking at you. In fact, when I spoke with your coach during the regular season, he told me, Lane is looking at another Southern Conference school. Who are some of the other schools, especially those in the SoCon, that were looking at you and may have offered you scholarships?
I had a few Division I's looking at me, but not many really offered. But the only other offer Division I I got was Morehead State in Kentucky.
And they're not a scholarship. They're not a scholarship program, are they?
No, it's only academic.
Yes, I know. Wayne Andrews used to be he was one of the actual players to drop football years ago at ETSU, became the president of Morehead State later on, and I know that a lot of people were concerned he might become the next ETSU president, and so football wouldn't be reenacted, but he was not, and football is back at ETSU, and Juliun Lane of West Greene is going to play for the Buccaneers. Well, I know you said you had gotten some interest, but only Morehead State had really said, do you want to come here, other than ETSU, but you're now saying there wasn't any offer from a Furman or any other Southern Conference school?
There was offers from Division II NAIA schools, but ETSU and Morehead State were the only schools Division I that actually offered me.
Okay, well that's understandable. Was it a case when Randy Sanders got the job that they really stepped up in their recruitment of you?
No, Coach Taylor from ETSU, he contacted me my junior year.
Okay.
He's just been talking to me ever since, believing in me, and so now he basically gave me a chance to come play and show him what I can do.
Well, Billy Taylor, who played at football at ETSU in the 80s, and longtime defensive coordinator, certainly has been the DC since ETSU brought back football. Actually, the second guest we ever had, Juliun Lane, on this show, and also was the defensive coordinator under Paul Hamilton at the end of the first inclination of ETSU football as well. You had a great year with West Greene this past year. Like I said, it seemed like every time you got the ball, you were doing something big. And I was impressed with your abilities as a defensive back as much as a skilled player. Where is ETSU telling you that you are going to play once you become a Buccaneer?
I believe it's going to be a defensive back, be a safety.
ETSU really struggled in the secondary this year. Did Billy Taylor offer you, say anything of it? You might have a chance to start in your freshman year?
Up there in the ETSU, you got to earn everything, and that's something I liked about it. So I'm not going in there for knowing I start anything. I'm going to go in there wanting to earn that start.
So nothing promised to you, but certainly a pathway, what with the secondary deficiencies of the Bucs this past year. I gotta ask, Julian, you're from the area, you're from Greenville, and it isn't that long ago that ETSU brought back football. I mean, let's face it, they didn't have a program when you were a freshman at West Greene, and it wasn't brought back officially. The announcement was made when you were in, middle school. So what do you remember? Do you remember when it was announced that ETSU would revive football?
Actually, I didn't hear of it until, sophomore year, something like that.
And that was the first year that they started playing again.
Yeah.
So that makes sense, yes. I mean, and I understand that and such. And let's face it, a lot of times when you're in middle school or whatever, when you're watching sports, you're watching the NFL or you're watching major college football instead of the Southern Conference. I get that here, Juliun Lane. Let me ask, what did you think your season highlight was this past year when you had that outstanding season, 20 offensive touchdowns for the West Greene Buffaloes? What was your individual highlight that you recall from your senior year in high school?
I was in the game against South Greene, our big-time rival.
Sure.
And they was driving down the ball so deep, and I just went up and took it back for a touchdown, and just ended up winning the game 35-21. That's the game.
And like I said,
I'm little. Man, so I'm old and I have little ones.
And I was impressed with your abilities as a defensive back. Certainly I can remember you picking up Brock Thompson, Unicoi County, an outstanding defensive back. I believe you had 6 interceptions on the season, if memory serves. I'm going from memory. Is my memory correct? 6 interceptions this year?
6 or 7. It's been a while for me, too.
We'll say a half dozen. How about that? We'll go with that. Roughly a half dozen for Juliun Lane at West Greene, who's going to ETSU and decided to go there ahead of Morehead State out of the Pioneer League, which means that he's going to get money, or I should say a scholarship, to play at ETSU, whereas Morehead State is non-scholarship, although I guess back in the day when Phil Simms played for them, they were. But back in the 90s or so, they went the non-scholarship route. Anyway, just some final notes here, Julian. I wanted to say, what are you looking forward to? You said you weren't guaranteed any starting position, and you were like, oh, I'll have to earn a spot and such. But is the plan initially for you to redshirt, or do you, like I said, do you think you can earn a spot on the field in your freshman year?
I believe I can earn a spot. It's just going to take a lot of hard work, and I'm going to do all that for them. Starting spot or playing time. But my goal going to ETSU is everybody's goal to win a championship. I believe I could probably do that with them.
Now, this is a program that's 11-22. So what makes you think that you can win a Southern Conference championship at ETSU?
New program, so everything's starting over new. It's all it takes is just believing in hard work. And when I was there, you can just tell all of them like to work hard. All of them want to win. And it's just that nature I love.
You said that Billy Taylor was the one that recruited you. What are he's going to be your defensive coordinator. So thoughts on Billy Taylor? How does he strike you as?
Very smart man. Somebody I would not want to make mad. But he's a very smart man. He's been around for such a long time. You can just see it, how passionate he is. You just look at him and just know he's all about football. He loves the game in and out.
And during your recruiting process, you said that Billy spoke to you first in your junior year when Carl Torbush was still the head coach. Have you met Randy Sanders?
I met Randy Sanders this past weekend.
So it was the first time right there. Had you ever met Carl Torbush before?
I met him on a football camp, doing like skills camp and stuff like that.
Okay. So as Taylor was the primary one, but are there any perceptions that you get of Sanders against Torbush? In other words, when you think of those two coaches, I mean, certainly Torbush on the way out, Sanders on the way in, but differences, Juliun Lane, what are the differences that come to mind in those two head coaches from your past meetings with them?
I don't really know much about them.
Okay, yeah, it's only one.
Can't really answer that.
So it's only one time that you met them, so I get that. But all right. But are there any perceptions that you had of Sanders?
Just with my meetings I've been with him, I feel like he loves the game and like he wants to win as well. And he's smart. I can just tell he's very smart. Funny. He's a player coach. First and foremost, a player coach, and he expects us to be a man more than anything. And I could just see that in him. So
I'm liking the funny. Because if there was one, to have humor coming back, and historically, I know that there have been some coaches. Certainly, Mike Cavan was very charismatic back in the '90s, and even Don Riley, perhaps unintentionally, was looked at as a possibly funny coach. But nevertheless, the humor back, perhaps, for Randy Sanders. I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that Juliun Lane is going to be going to ETSU. I liked his talents at West Greene. And you know what? ETSU needs defensive backs. Juliun Lane, thank you very much for coming on the show. Tri-City Sports Now. Juliun, if you want to have the interview archived, go to our 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities Facebook page, and you'll be able to see this interview on our video section, and you can tweet it out or share it with all your friends on Facebook as well. Tri-City Sports Now. Coming back, some talk about the Super Bowl when we return. Oh, you're most welcome.
Buick GMC. It means trust.